So you probably remember that the intellectual love is between teacher and students. So that's what we're going to go into a little bit more deeply today. And we mentioned this a few times already, that there's a tradition in Chabad that if Shlomo HaMelech, if King Solomon would have known about the relationship between a teacher and student, between a Rav and his Talmidim, then that's what he would have written the Shir HaShirim about, the Song of Songs. Because it's actually just as strong as the relationship between husband and wife, between a couple, and it has some elements that don't exist in that relationship. It's a very good question. I just started getting into it. Apparently, this type of relationship wasn't known to him because his father, his teacher, passed away before Shlomo was born. He never saw that relationship. And here we're talking about the relationship between Shmuel and David. They had the teacher-student relationship, and Shlomo never saw that. Shlomo himself, when he was 12, he became king, and Hashem, he was 12 years old, and Hashem granted him such wisdom that, in a sense, he never had a teacher. He learned from everybody, but he didn't have a particular person that was his Rav.
But he had students.
But he must have had a lot of people that he taught, but it wasn't on the same. It's almost like if you've never experienced it. It's like with marriage. If your parents didn't have, or right, if you didn't see your parents' marriage, it's very hard to imagine what it would be like and do it yourself. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that that's the reason why. But the relationship between his father and mother, that he saw very well. That was the relationship between David and Bathsheba, and that he was very familiar with. So he took that as the mashal for how the Jewish people are related to God. But that takes away, when you think about, when you try to describe the relationship between the Jewish people and God, it's just based on marital love. It doesn't include such an important facet of how we're related. How are we related? Through the Torah, right? That Hashem is teaching us Torah all the time. And the way we see the oral Torah is that is the ongoing relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, that it's continually being developed and built. And whenever a sage says something, it's like Hashem said it. Hashem told him what to say. That's the way that we understand it. So, if you come to model the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, you have to include the Torah in some way, and that doesn't play such a pronounced role when it comes to marital relationships. Obviously, the highest type of relationship then is if the wife is the student of the husband, right? Then it could be that it's both at the same time. And in every relationship, sometimes it's the other way around. It could be that the wife is in a certain sense the scholar and the one who knows, and that the husband listens. I know at least one couple that's like that. I used to know another one. She passed away already, but where the woman was the. I'm not just talking about scholar in the sense of that she's a university professor. And then, like the mamish, a woman who was very, very deep in her thought, like spiritually, much deeper than her husband. So, and he receives from her. That's also a possibility. But in any case, what's even more important is that the relationship between siblings doesn't capture the relationship between Jews. That in a certain sense, what really binds us, something that Rav Saadia Gaon is well known for saying, that our nation is a nation because of its Torahs. He said it even in the plural. Meaning that the reason that we are a nation, we have the root right? That we all came from Jacob. Okay? But there's been many, many additions to this family that came from the outside. They weren't necessarily part of the original family. And so when we combine everything together, what really makes us into a nation? What really makes us into one? It's our dedication to the Torah. It's that relationship that we have with Hashem. And so it's almost like when you look at how the Jewish people are today, the inability maybe to create a better society that's more unified and more solidified is because there's no clear sense that we have something in common. And what we really have in common, it's true, we also have a family background, but what we really have in common, the day-to-day, something that we see all the time, is dedication to Torah. And if a large proportion of the people are not organized around that, then you don't have this feeling of brotherhood, which is not exactly brotherhood. It's not. That's what we're trying to say. It's not exactly like siblings. It's different. And theoretically, at least, when we're pursuing truth, when we're pursuing the understanding of the Torah, there should be more understanding one towards the other. There should be much more understanding that somebody else can have a different understanding than I do. Okay? When it comes to family, that doesn't play such a big role, like how you understand things. But we see that the main issue that we have with one another is that we see the world differently, right? We see things differently. So people argue and they don't respect each other and so on. But if it was really a true love of Torah, a true love of searching for truth and understanding, and this is what we're going to get into today, understanding that when the teacher teaches, the different dedicated students understand differently. It's impossible for everybody to understand the same way. Okay, that's why we brought the whole thing for Sfirat Omer. We sort of skipped over a little section in this book just to get into Sfirat Omer. Shelo na'agu kavod ze b'ze. They didn't respect one another. It's a very interesting phrase. We'll digress for a moment just to look at this phrase, linhog kavod, to act with respect towards somebody else. It's not the same thing as giving respect. There's acting with respect and there's giving respect, which really in Hebrew are two different things. One's called either linhog bekavod or lechabed. That's to give. That's like when I act in a respectful way towards somebody. And there is latet kavod, which is something entirely different, which is to give a person respect or to honor them. Okay? We're not commanded really to honor everybody. We are commanded to respect them. It's not the same thing. I don't have to put somebody up on a pedestal, but I have to respect him, even if he thinks differently than I do. So this really becomes possible only through our common denominator that we love Hashem who gave us the Torah. And if that isn't the common denominator, it's very hard to find respect, because when it comes to other things, of course people will see the world differently. And there's no feeling of camaraderie between people who are not engaged in the same pursuit, in the same goal. Now, somebody could come and point and say, look at the leaders of different parts of the frum world. They don't treat each other with respect either. So that's exactly what happened in Rabbi Akiva's time. That in the end, it ended with a catastrophe. But that's exactly the point. But what it's saying is that there's no clear understanding here of how the process of learning happens. And because of that, there's like this very, very horrendous feeling that people have that if you interpret the Torah differently than I do, if you do it differently than I do, then you're a heretic or something, which is nonsense, complete nonsense. And there's no feeling that we're both pursuing the same thing. It's just that you can't hear it the same way. So that's going to be the topic today. And towards the end, I'll try to explain what this chart is. These 49 words. Okay. So we could let's read a little. This is a translation from the book that we've been learning from, and I have to say I didn't read it before I printed it, so I'm hoping it's good. Okay, the highest aspiration of intellectual activity is embodied in the pursuit of Torah knowledge, recognizing the divine authorship of the Torah and the divinely inspired writers of the remaining books of the Bible motivates the truly inquiring person to delve deeper and deeper into the infinite sea of Torah wisdom. So this is a very important statement. It's saying that you have to start from some common denominator. And you have one of these?
No.
Aha. So you're going to have to sit with somebody who does.
No, it's all right. Why didn't you, do you want me to make more?
No. I think.
No, but I want to make one.
Yeah.
It's a new one you gave out today?
Yeah.
Because I only saw something with figure on it.
Yeah.
You can have more. Okay.
So there has to be some common, something in common. And the minimum is the divine authorship. How you want to define divine authorship, I don't care. Okay. What you call divine authorship is really, can also be discussed. But that the source of these 24 books that are in the Tanakh, they're divine. And what does this mean? It means that they are true at a level that's inseminating. Meaning, inseminating truth means that I'll swallow a piece of it and you swallow the same piece of it. It might inseminate us. It might make us pregnant in a different way. It might lead to something else. But this is our food. This is what we eat and drink. This is what we live from. Though all relationships contain vital elements of Jewish law and tradition as a foundation on which they are built, none characterizes the all-encompassing love and devotion to Torah as a relationship between teacher and student. So we said that even husband and wife, at some level, you have to understand that the two souls are part of one thing. So it's related in some way to what the Torah says. But there's nothing like the actual learning of Torah from a teacher to a student that fully develops this love of Torah. Okay, this connection with the Torah. In discussing teacher and student here, we're not dealing with a casual acquaintance based on an occasional class or discussion, but rather a serious, ongoing relationship built on an awareness of the genuine spiritual connection that emerges between souls dedicated to the same purpose. So at the simple level, it means that there's a teacher and there's students who have been together listening for a serious amount of time and with a serious interest in learning whatever this topic is, or learning with this teacher, whoever he is. And it's not a casual, it's not somebody who walked in suddenly. Why? Because if somebody walks in suddenly on a teacher-student relationship, it's sort of like walking in on something intimate that's going on, and you hear something, and you might get something, but you don't get the essence of it. You can't. It takes time to develop this type of relationship, and
So you have no responsibility.
right, and you have no responsibility. You're not coming next, whatever. Okay. There are places you probably know about this. There are places. There are certain teachers, and Rizal was certainly this way when he started, that if you weren't willing to commit fully to the group, so you can't come listen. There's no casual listeners. And we don't believe in this for whatever reason, probably because there's no time for this anymore, and whatever a person gets, he gets. But it's up to the person to understand that a place where I haven't truly committed myself, I'm not getting everything I can from the teacher-student relationship. I'm not getting everything I can from the interaction between the different students. And the interaction, what we're going to get at, is that the interaction between the students is no less important than the interaction between the teacher and the students. Meaning what the students do to each other, the teacher can't do for them. They have to do it to one another. In this sense, a true unity of souls develops unique in its property of consistency. Right? Around some teacher, there develops a certain community of souls, if you want, and it depends on their consistency and being willing to engage each other as much as they're willing to commit to hearing whoever their teacher is. Unfettered by the more glaring shortcomings of relationships based on emotional and behavioral inconsistencies and drives, intellect in potential has the ability to nurture and harness pure spiritual energy. Okay? And when it comes to emotions, they wane and they fade and they go up and they come down. And habits also from time to time, right? Everybody just went through Pesach, and it'll be a big chiddush if somebody feels exactly the same as when they went in, because sort of Pesach has this ability to flip your world over, and it takes a good few weeks to get back into some kind of habits, and a lot of times they're just different. Like you suddenly find yourself in a different world than the one you left before you entered Pesach. That's one of the things that Pesach does. It's a holiday of freedom, if you want. And it's freedom from habits. And when you break habits, it turns out you don't need to break them for too long. And it's very hard to get back into them. And usually you create some new ones. So feelings and habits are not the best thing to develop a relationship around. And what he's saying here is that really the intellect, the pursuit of truth in the intellect, or just the pure pursuit of intellect, is something that's constant. It's very, very consistent. So for instance, if somebody is seriously learning, Pesach doesn't make a big difference in their learning. They just continue through it. But in terms of their habits, they might not be able to learn the same hours and stuff like that. But in the end, their pursuit, it's still the same pursuit. And an amazing thing, it's just been 2 days, and here we are back in the same place. And Baruch Hashem, it feels like we never left. The teacher or spiritual guide attempts to transmit the wisdom of God as enclosed in the Torah to the student, who is striving to understand the secrets and directives encoded in it. Thus, the love of teacher to student is identified with the sphere of Chokhmah, wisdom, whereas the love of student to teacher is designated as the sphere of Bina, as understanding. Okay, so they're the Chokhmah and Bina that we saw in the chart that we started with, the 13 types of love. The inseparable nature of these two sfirot, right, as opposed to all the others, Chokhmah and Bina, they are inseparable. You can't take them apart. They're always together. It's stated in the Zohar as the two companions that never separate. This type of relationship, so amazingly, this is also the class last night, whoever was there, is best represented in the Torah by Moshe Rabbeinu and Joshua, of whom it is said, and his servant Joshua, Joshua was Moshe's servant, the son of Nun, a young man would not part from the tent of Torah learning. So what did we hear last night? So we heard that when it says son of Nun, that wasn't Yoshua's father's name. The Chazal say that wasn't his name. I don't remember what his name was. But Nun was because he was Moshe's student. And that's the Binah. But amazingly, and that was one of the things he talked about last night, that Yoshua understood the Nun, the 50 gates of understanding, better than Moshe did. Moshe only got to the 50th gate when he passed away. But Yoshua, as a student, was constantly aware of all 50 gates.
I'm sorry, Nun, the word Nun,
Nun
means 50 gates of learning?
It just means the letter Nun, like 50.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. It's like a plate. So he's saying, what does he feel like? It's what we say, that the students are like children. And so he's the son of Nun, he's the son of his father, who is Moshe Rabbeinu, the master of the 50 gates of understanding. And he would not part the tent of Torah learning. The Song of Songs, whose simple meaning is a compelling love story between men and women, or on a deeper and metaphorical level, the ongoing covenantal love of God in Israel, can also be seen to, like we said, intimate the passionate love of Torah presented by teacher and student, Rebbe and disciple. And like we said, that really to describe the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, you have to use the relationship between a teacher and a student. So the inner dimension of Chokhmah is selflessness, right? Wisdom on its inside is bittul, selflessness. The teacher imbued with love is his or her student. So this we explained, right? Is inspired to condense the expansive wisdom until it can be contracted into a single point, not exactly understandable to the student, but I think the right word would be transferable. The hard part of getting a class together is whether you can limit yourself to one thing that you want to explain. Or even if it's a series of things, to bring them down to the point where you feel that they're like a point, they're like a seed that you can give from one person to from yourself to somebody else. That's the selflessness that the teacher goes through. Because we discussed this in length, because there's two types of giving, right? There's the giving that I'm enjoying the giving itself. I enjoy hearing myself talk. It's wonderful. Or that what I'm going to enjoy, I'm going to receive pleasure not when I give, but rather when the student receives and understands. And so that's the difficulty that requires selflessness on the part of the teacher. So that's why the teacher is considered to be selflessness, wisdom. This single point of wisdom, like a seed, is then nurtured and embellished with many examples and metaphors until the knowledge contained within it expands and resembles the vastness of knowledge the teacher originally intended to impart. That also takes a lot of selflessness, because it's explaining in one way, in another way, in another way, in another way. The teacher already knows what he's saying, but it could be that the student doesn't get it. So even a story in the Talmud that there was one very particular teacher, one of the Moraim, one of the sages of the Talmud. He had a very difficult student that he had to explain things to 400 times. So clearly he didn't explain it the same way 400 times. At least a few of those were different. And he tried different approaches, and let me explain it this way and explain it that way. So that requires a tremendous amount of selflessness to be able to do that again and again and again until he sees that the student received it properly. In a certain sense, that's what all the generations of history are, right? Hashem trying to explain the Torah to us. So the first time he explained it this way, then we come again into the world, he explains it that way, then he explains it this way. Eventually you'll get it. And every time Hashem goes through this selflessness of willing to recreate the world, and actually he's recreating it at every moment for this to happen, and he's recreating the whole scenery and the background and the whatever's needed, all in order to get me to, in the end, understand the Torah. What does it mean when I understand the Torah? What's the big chap when I understand it, when I get it? So he says, then I become like him. That's what Hashem wants. He wants me to be like him. So if I haven't still figured it out, so he said, he gives me another chance, another chance, another chance. This process takes great concentration and commitment on the part of the teacher, who must toil to find the proper and exact literary vehicles for his thoughts, or metaphors. In this way, the teacher achieves an inner experience of self-nullification, selflessness. Even preceding this, though, the one who aspires to the wisdom of the Torah must himself be an empty vessel. But we said that there's also selflessness on the part of the student. What did we say the selflessness there was? That I have to come with an open mind. An open mind means that I might not agree in the end, but right now I'm suspending whatever questions I might have. And just to try to accept it the way that it is, that it's being said. Just to try to accept the words. To understand what's being said. Whether I agree with it, don't agree with it, then I'll have plenty of time to regurgitate what I learned and see whether I can chew it and whether it tastes good or not. But first you have to receive it once. That's why a student is really, a good student is called a Talmid Chacham. Why a Talmid Chacham? Because he has to have Chokhmah, he has to have selflessness. He has to empty himself. He has to be like an empty vessel. We explained it the other time that we explained this. We also said that you also have to come without any pre-image of who you are. Am I worthy of understanding this? Am I able to understand this? Is it beyond me? It's not beyond me. All these things you have to also put aside and say, no, I'm an empty vessel. Whatever comes, comes. And I can learn anything. Nothing prevents the acquiring of Torah wisdom more than an overblown ego, or a sense of pride in one's own perception of self-knowledge. Really, what he's saying here is that those are where most of the questions really come from. And more importantly, they come as questions that are not questions. Whereas Rav Nachman used to say, they come from the Chalal HaPanui. He calls them questions that are not questions. He says that our ego is the source of our imagination. And so we have all these questions that are not really questions. We just imagine them to be questions because we haven't fully perceived, we haven't fully understood what we were taught. And so because I'm not open to really taking it in, and right away I begin to question it, the questions come from a source that is not in itself correct. The questions are not really questions. It says these are all questions from the evil inclination, if you want, from the ego.
So I have a question. Don't questions help the person in their understanding? Say they don't hop at all. So
Yes. The question is when do you do that? Just a second. I made a mistake here. When is the right time for this? Do I begin the questioning process?
like you have to go over the shir a few times.
It's an amazing example I saw a few months ago. It's on TED, actually. You can watch it. There's a woman who did who was one of the biggest spokeswomen for female motherly rights, I guess, to children or whatever it was. And she decided she described herself as completely a feminist and this and that. And she decided to do a documentary because that's what she does, not because it interested her. It's just a job to do a documentary on father's rights when it comes to children. And she spent a year and a half or so interviewing a lot of fathers. And she said, as I was interviewing them, I asked all the right questions and had the questions prepared, and they answered. And I documented it, meaning it was recorded on film and so on. And there's not one thing that they told me that I hadn't heard before, and nothing changed anything I knew about the whole topic. It was just like a job. And then she says she did something very interesting. She says to do a good documentary, you have to transcribe everything that's on tape. So she sat for a few months transcribing all the interviews. And she said that that's when it hurt her, that she couldn't listen. She was processing what she was hearing with her predetermined notions of what the right answer was. And she says when she began to write and read what she had heard, and it's very hard, it's a different, I don't know if it's hard, but it's a different process altogether, where your ego, because it's a very bittul type of process to sit there and write what somebody else is saying. It's very hard for you to put yourself into it. So as she went through it, she suddenly found herself identifying with so many of these things. There's a big TED talk about that she brings this out. And she says, so many of my views changed because I was able to listen to what I was being told. I couldn't listen to it before. So this is an amazing thing. I find it to be the case that if I don't write what my thoughts are, even my own thoughts, I can't truly criticize them. Because I'm very close to myself. I'm certain 100% that this makes perfect sense. When I try to write it down, suddenly I see that, wait a minute, it's not so simple. All the more so when I'm writing somebody else down. So especially if I mean, that's what I do with Rav Ginsburg all the time, but even to somebody who I don't agree with. So I've learned that if I take the 2, 3, 4 hours even, if I think it's an important argument that I need to understand and I need to maybe answer or criticize in some way, I take the time to rewrite it the way I'm hearing it, and then to see what happens. So for me, that's the strongest vehicle that I have for doing this. It could be that other people have other ways of doing it, but yes, there is a time when you need to criticize, but you have to make sure that you first heard, and it's not so easy to hear. Even things that I've heard 100 times. She listened to, 200 men talking about this topic. And they all said the same thing. She still didn't hear it. She couldn't hear that they were human beings who had a relationship with their children. The circuit's closed there. So, especially when it comes to things that are spiritually deep and complex, so you need to go, or, our whole topic here, Torah to Nefesh. The first time you hear about your ego, so you write about, well, you shut up. You shut it out, and you shut it up. You can't really hear it. And I still catch myself now that I'm transcribing some classes, old classes from Rav Ginsburg about this. I'm suddenly, wow, somehow it's sitting in my head the opposite. And then I see it, because it's very hard for me to accept that, wait a minute, it's not, it still happens after years. Because there's certain things that you can't be aware of until you really empty yourself from all your preconceptions about who you are and your self-image and what's true and so on. Okay, so that's about the selflessness we said that both sides need, because they don't part. Both of them have some kind of chokhmah going on. The inner property of Binah is simcha, joy. Happiness in different form manifests in all productive relationships, yet it is the pure spiritual joy born of new understanding of Torah that best represents the true essence of simcha. This is brought a lot of times, that the greatest joy that a person has is when he understands something new. Because what is joy? Joy is a feeling of expansion, that I have covered new ground. So it's true that a person has tremendous joy when they have a new house, or they add a room or something like that. They've expanded, they have more than they had before. But how many times can you do that? Unless you're... So the place that most people come in contact with joy is when they understand something new. And something that was difficult to understand, something that's a complex topic, especially. This unique aspect of joy is reserved for those whose whole being yearns for ever new levels of Torah understanding. But what it says also is that there's no comparison to the type of joy that you can get from new understanding. It's not just how many times in life you can experience it. It's also the depth. But that depth is really reserved to people whose whole life is in Torah. In this perspective, everyone, even the teacher, assumes the role of student of God. Right? Even the teacher is a student. As it says, and all of your children are students. We're all the students of Hashem. And great is the peace of your children. Because of that, they have great peace. Learning Torah is the most all-inclusive mitzvah in that it generates knowledge and desire to perform all the other mitzvot. As expounded by our sages, learning Torah is equal to all the mitzvot. And it's always learning in order to do. Okay, so now it is the love of student for teacher that opens him up to all that the teacher wishes to impart. Now this is the thing that's not clear. It's not clear to most people. But you can't really learn from somebody that you don't love. That doesn't seem like that at first, because we have all this picture of a university academic type of learning, where you're imparting information. I don't have to love Wikipedia to get information from it. I didn't have to love my professors in university to get the information they gave me. But that's not what we're talking about in Torah. We're not talking about just information.
Don't you love, the subconscious of the essence? But don't you love, like you just said, actually, the very story is expansion. But if you're learning, like all kinds of amazing,
You love Torah.
then you love he who is incarnate. Or you say that you have to love first.
Right. That the deepest love, because in the end there is an act of insemination going on. It's not just the imparting of the knowledge. It's rather what the Jewish people went through with Moshe Rabbeinu, that he tells them only after 40 years do you now have a knowing heart. Or what the Talmud says, that only after 40 years a person becomes one with his teacher. What does it mean to become one? It means that he takes the teacher's place. It's not, there are things like that in academia also, but that's not what mostly goes on. And what we're saying is that in Torah learning, that's what goes on all the time. And the exception is when it doesn't go on. The exception is that I just sit in a class just to hear information. But really, as the sages say, a person can only learn Torah where his heart desires. The heart is involved. What do you mean, I love Torah? No, it's that I love this teacher, his style, how he is, the way I see him in his life. I connect to that. And when a person is lucky enough to find somebody like that, then they become their what we call their special Rav, their special teacher. So it could be that it's the style, it could be how he is, but in the end, I love this person.
So if you want to teach something to someone, you have to touch his heart.
Right?
You have to also have a teacher loving the
Exactly. That's the other side of it. That's the other side of it. That's why we said that it includes that it's also the love of the teacher for the student. But the point here is that there has to be yearning, or what we call in Hebrew gaguim. I don't know how to say it exactly. To really work hard, a person has to have yearning, has to have a craving for something. Let's understand this. Torah didn't come out of nature. There are certain aspects of the Torah that you can learn from nature, but Torah is not like science. Science, which literally means knowledge, comes from observing nature. Anybody can do it. Better or worse, but anybody can do it. Torah is not an observation of God, even if somehow we could observe him. It's not the result of something sterile. How did we get the Torah? There was somebody that Hashem sent. His name was Moshe Rabbeinu. And through him we all experienced what prophecy is. And it's received from teacher to student. It's not something that you can just, let's recreate it all now. Let's rebuild it. Let's start from the ground and build it. Right? Start from the beginning. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a teacher. That's how it works. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Even he received it from Hashem. Hashem was his teacher, and he taught him 40 days and 40 nights. And Moshe then taught us over 40 years, right? A year for a day. That was the original year for a day that should have been. Moshe wasn't going to die when he was 80 years old. After the original design was that they would finish at Mount Sinai, they would go into the land of Israel, they'd construct the temple, not the tabernacle, and then Moshe would teach for 40 years. and he would teach what he had been taught at Mount Sinai for 40 years. A day, every day that he learned would be a year studying. So in the end, they did learn with him for 40 years, but it wasn't in Eretz Yisrael. But that's how Torah works. That's why it's so traditional, if you want. Okay. That's why there's always a tension in Torah between dedication to my teacher and dedication to the Torah. It's a tension. It's not so simple. Sometimes you hear somebody saying, I'm more dedicated to the truth. Meaning, even if my teacher taught it one way, I can't, it doesn't sit with me. So I can't agree with how he said it, with how he interpreted it. I have my own interpretation. It creates a very difficult tension in the student. Because how can I say differently from my teacher? So if I have another explanation, that's something else. But to say I think differently than him, it's not simple at all for somebody who's really devoted, who has real yearning and real love and a connection with his teacher. So if he thinks differently, it's a big deal for him. It's a hard tension inside. So, for instance, in Chassidus, there's almost no such thing that a Chassid would come and say, I say differently than the Rebbe. That doesn't exist. Because I love him so much, even I feel like I have to protect his opinions. I have to apologize for them, right? I have to prove that they're right. And it's because I love him. It's not because I understand fully. Somebody who's more learned than me could come and give me 1,000 reasons why what I'm saying, what he said is wrong. And it's still all defended. Why? Because I'm dedicated to the person. So Torah works like that. So even though there's a love of Torah underneath the relationship between the student and the teacher, that they both love Torah, but there's also the relationship between them, and then it becomes a tension sometimes when we don't see it eye to eye, when we don't see it the same. Okay, so I want to skip a little because otherwise we won't finish in time. What time is it? Well, it's 1 o'clock already. Okay, so quickly. A community of students, I'm skipping to page 3. A community of students that coalesces around a particular spiritual leader enjoys what is called Dibuk Chaverim. Dibuk Chaverim means the clinging of the friends together. Chaverim is not students, Chaverim is friends. So they become friends with one another. They cling to one another. And here, and if you remember the chart, the love between the students, or the clinging between the friends that are all in the same under the same teacher, so that was in Dat. That was in the sphere of knowledge. So the sphere of Dat is the integrative middle point between Chochmah and Bina, teacher and student. Thus, the community of students, united in their commitment to not only learn from their teacher, but to implement his teachings as well, is associated with that whose inner dimensions is self-unity. So what they try to create is they try to create some kind of unity between them. But it's not so simple. In any case, the Arizal, learning from Rabbi Akiva, he said to his students that the coming of the Mashiach depends on you, not on me. It's exactly what the Rebbe said to everybody on the 28th Koach Nisan of Tafshin Nun Aleph. He said the same thing. He said, I've done all that I can, meaning I've taught what I can. Now it's up to you. He didn't mean that I'm not going to continue teaching. You kept teaching. There's no reason why you shouldn't. But he says, but now it's up to you, and meaning that the real redemption, the redemption really depends on the listeners, not on the one giving. I mean, it's not Moshe Rabbeinu that redeems the world. Moshe Rabbeinu can't conquer the land of Israel by himself. He can't build the Beis HaMikdash by himself. It's up to us. So he says, I've done all I can, now it's up to you. What does it mean up to you? Then now you have to uncover your connection with one another. Same thing says Hashem. I can bring the redemption, as it were, in a moment, but that's not going to be the redemption. That's not what you're looking for. What do you call redemption? It's when you cling to one another. if you're able to form a unified, cohesive whole that's unified, not necessarily identical, you don't have to be the same as one another, you still have to respect one another and be connected to one another. We'll see in a moment what you do for one another, even if you don't agree. So if you're able to create this clinging, that's when the Mashiach comes. As mentioned previously, the Rizal attached great importance to those relationships between students, so much so that he taught that the coming of Mashiach depends on the rectification of the loves of the middle column in general, and especially the love between students. This association with Da'at is alluded to in the prophecy of Isaiah. Because what does he say there? He says that the Messianic era is described as Ki mala'aretz it's de'ah et Hashem. It means, in general, redemption is Da'at. It's when there is more consciousness, higher consciousness. And Da'at in people, when it comes to people, is the ability to connect with one another, to unify. And it's also exactly what we mean when we say we want Mashiach. What do we want Mashiach? We want this cohesiveness to occur. The tzaddik, I'm skipping a little, tzaddik or a righteous person is referred to as the foundation of the world. We'll skip this. Okay? And then there's a little bit more that you can read later. So now, how do we understand this? Let's skip to on page 4, to the right column, the second paragraph, where it starts first. It should be noted that the term dibuk chaverim, unity of students or clinging of the friends, does not mean that all the students are necessarily similar. In fact, the greater the spiritual leader, the more diverse the range of students he attracts. This has to be known. The smaller if a teacher has smaller stature, then all the students will be relatively the same, from the same background, pretty much the same lifestyle. What was amazing about the Rebbe, that I don't know if somebody remained that way, but certainly people walked in that weren't from it all. They came to listen. They came to see him, to ask his advice. He has students that are not. And what's more amazing, and I used to say, I still think it's true, that kibbutz galuyot, that the gathering of the ingathering of the exiles really happened in 770. Why? Because there you have Sfaradim, Teimanim, Ashkenazim, and even Goyim, who all practice the same form exactly of Yiddishkeit, with all the customs, everything exactly the same. They did away, for a Yemenite not to do how his father taught him. That's like Kriyas Yamsuf. It's like it's as difficult as parting the sea, and yet there's many Yemenites in Chabad. And the same thing with many Sfardim, and the same thing with all types of Ashkenazim, even those who were Litvaks.
But is that really the goal? Is that what you're already saying?
No, it says on the contrary. They took this because they wanted it, but they came from such different backgrounds.
Right,
they were able to listen to the same man speak. Somehow he spoke to this and to that, and in the end, because they were so connected, they love him so much, they want to be like him. But he never said, you have to be like me. That's not one of the stipulations at all.
But won't that ultimately happen then? Because when everybody...
Everybody will be like the Mashiach. That's exactly an ingathering of exiles. At the highest level, the people who are so different that anywhere else in the Jewish world, they don't connect. And their customs are so different. Everything is, it's just a different world. Suddenly, they connect. They're listening to the same teacher, and they're all engrossed in what he's telling them. And eventually, because they're so engrossed in it, because they're so connected, they love him so much, so they decide they want to be like him. It's not the other way around. It's not like to get in you have to wear this. You don't have to wear this. I didn't grow up wearing this, and I didn't come in wearing this. I didn't come in wearing that. Okay, it's something that comes from the being together. But the greater the spiritual leader, the greater his teachings, the more diverse the backgrounds and the ages and the sexes and everything about the students. So that's where they don't have to be the same. So on the contrary, but this also means that in the beginning there could be a lot more disagreement. And we'll see this in a minute. There's a lot more disagreement about what did he say. Because people are coming from such different backgrounds, they're all drawn to the same place because there's something very deep here, but they have a lot of disagreements. It is possible for the students, even if they are true disciples and receive the same teachings, true disciples meaning they didn't just walk in, they've been there for 20 years, and he just said something. Even if they are true disciples and receive the same teachings, to apprehend, analyze, and integrate those teachings differently. They don't agree on what it means. Their nisayon, their test, is whether they can understand that even though this is all given from one shepherd, in them it can appear differently, and not to make it a reason for separation between them.
But even that's ideal, isn't it?
What's ideal?
That it should appear differently in each one of them.
Okay. In the same way that there's, even when there's the same husband and wife, so the children turn out differently. One's this, one's it doesn't always come out the same. Every single time it's something else. So all the more so that there are different people here being inseminated. Each one again, the insemination here is to make it into something practical, that it turns into something that you actually do. It's not just how you understand. That's also true. It's how you act afterwards. What do you understand the point was? Where do you think this is all going? Where this is all leading? And to understand, this is a very difficult thing, but truly, if you feel that another Jew is really committed to Torah, so the fact that he has a different conclusion than you do shouldn't be a problem at all. How could it be any different? It has to be that way. Because I'll say it in a different way. If one father can beget many different children, so the more so that Hashem, who's infinitely more infinite, when he gives us Torah, each person does something with it that's different. That's how you know that Hashem is infinite. Otherwise, how would you know that he's infinite? If everything would come out the same. So maybe it's just a mechanism. Maybe it's like horses. All the horses are pretty much the same. Spot here, spot there. But they're all the same. They all look the same. They all think the same. They all love sugar. They all love carrots. That's it. They all walk. They don't do anything special. When it comes to human beings, each one is a different world altogether. When the teacher contracts his thoughts, so here, this is the main point, that the whole insemination process is described in 3 stages. It's called amal, o maim rakia. We talked about it in the past. I'll say it again. Light, water, firmament. Those are the 3 things that Hashem creates in the first 2 days of creation. Light, water, and firmament. And that's the order. That first there is the thought, which is light. Light describes how the thought is in the teacher, in his mind, or let's say in Hashem's mind. And water describes how he contracts it into something that can be transferred to the student. But water is formless. It takes on any form that you want. Right? Water takes on the shape of whatever container you put it into. So it's called formless. Or in the language of the Zohar, it's called maim denaide. They flow. So as it enters into each person's mind, it takes on a different form. Why? Because the teacher took the effort to contract it, to make it into something that can be given to it. If it's just light I can't transfer. Nobody can transfer light. But I contract it and it liquefies a little. But it's formless, so then I can give it to a variety of people. Eventually, in the other person, it solidifies into a firmament. That's already inside the receiver, inside the student.
That's what Rabbi Akiva saw with the drop of water.
Don't say water, water. That's what you mean?
No, when
Oh,
Rabbi
with
Akiva saw the, yeah,
Yeah, okay, maybe.
maybe that's what he saw.
Okay, could be. So the firmament is how the student understands it. Firmament is dat. So all here is like the chokhmah, and the water is like the understanding, in the sense that you have to build it a form. It'll fill up whatever form you build for it. Binah means to build also. Not really, but that's how the early grammarians explain it. They say, "Vayiven Hashem Elokim Tatzela," that Binah Yetera Nitna Ba'isha. We know that women have an extra measure of understanding because it says, "Vayiven Hashem Elokim Tatzela." Hashem built the side, as it's translated, the rib. Okay. So skipping to the next page. As each student is a unique individual, he hears the teaching of his mentor differently. And in the process of integrating it into himself, that's the dot, and it becomes one with myself. So I integrate it into my consciousness, enclose the firmament in his own original manner, bringing the words down to his earth, how he is. The classic example is of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai both learned from the same teacher. Both of whom received the tradition from the same pair of teachers, Shmaya and Avtalion. It's not that Hillel was like Shmaya and Shammai was like Avtalion. No, they both heard from both of them together. Shmaya and Avtalion were brothers. Despite their wide divergence in matters of Jewish law, they are the paradigm of the words of our sages. We say about Hillel and Shammai, Bet Hillel Bet Shammai, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. These are both the words of Hashem. Why? Because the firmament in each one of them is different. The way they integrate it into themselves. So let's see what it says here. Western logic would assert that in the case of a disagreement, if one sage is correct and we follow his opinion, in practice, the other by default must be wrong. But Talmudic logic operates on the assumption that both opinions may in fact be true on a higher level, but on our earthly plane, one approach to Jewish law has been chosen to dominate. But they're both true. They're both true. They came from the same drop. Though we follow the rulings of Hillel now, there is a tradition that after the coming of Mashiach, when human nature will be purified and elevated, will be more in tune with the level of perception of Shammai, and thus follow his opinion. Okay. In any case, what do you gain from this? That they argue with one another. You need argumentation to understand what you think. You need somebody to challenge what you understood to fully understand what you understood, or the way that you understand it. Sometimes you have to be truthful enough to back down if you understood incorrectly. But a lot of times, no, we say, they're really, truly from divine origin. But I want to understand it fully 100%. This is the most difficult thing when people start learning Torah. That's the thing that's always the most difficult for them, to pursue the two lines of argument fully, so much so that in the end there has to be an incompatibility. There has to be. They can't be saying the same thing. And you only understand how they're different if you can argue with one another. But to really argue, and that's here on the next column, read it later, it's called Etvahev Besufa. על כן יאמר בספר מלחמות השם אתבהב בסופה ואת הנחלים ארנון. You see that verse on page 5 on the right column. This is one of the songs after the song of the well. So the Torah says, therefore it says in the book of the wars of Hashem, Vahev at the end, and the rivers of Arnon. So what's Vahev at the end? So the simple explanation is Vahev was a place. That was the last war that the Jewish people fought before they entered the land of Israel. But the way the sages explain it, they say et vahev besufa, that at the end of every word that's truly a true argument, that's to uncover the truth of what my opinion is in Torah, there comes vahev. How much is vahev equal to? So the sages just say ahava, but they don't note for some reason. It's very simple. You can just see it. Vav hey bet is equal to 13. It means value of love. That the whole argument starts from our love of Torah and the love of the teacher, and it ends with loving one another because you helped me understand my opinion, not because I'm more right than you. Because I can't understand my opinion fully, I can't see my firmament 100%. It's not firm yet until you challenge it, until somebody challenges it. It could be that my firmament is not firm enough. I have to give it up. You can't build anything on it. It's not strong enough. Okay? So what happened, for this to happen, that's what we call that there has to be respect between the students. So this page that I gave you with the 49 words, so it's this beautiful, it's a beautiful meditation. And the reason I give it every year in some place, because I think I've given it here before, but I'm not sure. These are, you have to know the whole Torah by heart. What do you need to know? You don't need to know the Chumash by heart. I can tell you that already. But it's very strange that the Jew won't know the whole Chumash by heart. What, you live with this thing here for 80, 90, 100 years. You've heard it at least 60, 70, 80 times. Most of it you already know by heart. What can I do if I'm new, or if I don't understand Hebrew and I understand what they say in shul? So this is a shortcut. If you know this, you know the whole Chumash by heart. What is this? It's 5 verses, the central verse from each one of the Chumashim. Okay. Yeah, you saw this page? So I made at least 6. So there should be at least enough so that if you share, you can.
Is that 5 verses?
So let's see how it's built. Settle, but you can learn 49 words. It's not the end of the world.
So I should make more copies.
Make some copies.
Yes.
The verse from Bereshis is Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ta'aretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's simply that's the central verse of the whole Chumash. What's the central verse of Shmos? It's Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. I am Hashem your Lord, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. The first commandment. What about Vayikra? So Vayikra, it should be, Ken? Does it start? Lo tikom ve'lo titor et bnei amecha ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha ani Hashem. Lo tikrom, you shouldn't take revenge and hold a grudge against those of your people, individuals from your people. You should love your fellow as you love yourself. I am Hashem. That's the central verse of Vayikra. What about Bamidbar? So Bamidbar is very interesting. The central verse is the priestly blessing. But it's not one verse, it's really 3. But there's a tradition that the book of Bamidbar is really 3 books. Right. It's one book until Vayi bin Sa'aron, and then the 2 verses of Vayi bin Sa'aron of Nucha Yomar are a separate Chumash. And then from there on, until the end of the book, is another book. So it fits, so it's, everybody knows. Hashem b'shmecha, Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And then in Dvarim,
Say that in English.
The priestly blessing.
Oh, you said everybody. There was a second. I thought that. Okay.
And from Dvarim, the central verse is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Very simple. So if you know these 5, which are really like 7, so at least when you go to Shemaim, you'll say, "I know the Chumash by heart. I know the main thing." But what happens now when you do this? So if you take all these, you see that they have these 5/7 central verses have 49 words in them. So they correspond to the 49 days of Sfirat HaOmer. But the most beautiful thing is which word is in the middle, right? Which says what the essence of Sfirat HaOmer is. Ve'ahavta. L'reacha. No, the three words, mamash, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Those are around the center. L'reacha, for your fellow. So ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. That's what Hillel said to somebody who came to convert. He said, "Teach me the whole Torah when I'm on one foot." He says, "Whatever you hate, don't do to your fellow." Or ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. The rest is just an explanation. So if you know that, this is what rectifies the whole Sfirat HaOmer. The whole Sfirat HaOmer is to bring all of this together. So we can say a lot more, but we have to know because I have to leave.
I still don't understand. So you gave the example how because all the Hasidim are connected to the Rebbe, that in the end they all became homogeneous in their.
They're not homogeneous. They don't agree today.
Oh, today.
No, even then they didn't agree.
But with Minhag,
In terms of because they want to be.
that way, but then they became that way. So what was? So obviously there's a strength in that they were able to give up.
Yeah, they wanted to be like the Rebbe. I don't
then
think.
it's easier to unify when you're all the same. So
No,
what is it
not
for?
necessarily.
Of course it is.
We're all the same. We all have a kippah on our head. We all have eyes and ears. Yeah, we're all human. We're all Jewish. We're all this. We're all this. It doesn't matter how many levels you take. I'm just saying that the connection was so strong.
Right. No, that point I understood. But I don't
That it's
understand
like
how-
kibbutz galuyot.
Like, so is that what we can expect?